Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 40k Fireside podcast. I'm David Gaylord, and I'm joined by my good friend Vic Vijay. Together, we discuss 40k and the meta from our perspective, along with events we've recently been to and those that have got coming up. So come on down to the Fireside and listen.
Alright, everyone, welcome back to another episode of 40k Fireside. We're here at episode 7 after what feels like a little two and a half week hiatus. I'm obviously joined by my co-host Vic. We're recording a bit late at night. I got the whiskey. Vic's got the orange juice, even though we both agreed to get a whiskey this time. But, he's leaving me high and dry. But no, it's great to be back. We had some awesome feedback from the previous episode. I'm going to try and incorporate that into this one. One of the big feedbacks was kind of the interlude music, so we're going to cut that a bit shorter. And, it's all part of our kind of continuous improvement that we're trying to make on the podcast. So why don't I jump into what we're going to be covering today? As you might have already seen, the episode is going to be called Post-Coventry Depression. So that's going to be our main theme that we're going to cover. But first of all, we're going to talk about two of our past events, so Coventry and then Vic's team tournament that he went to just last weekend, kind of the learnings from that and the differences between teams and singles tournaments. And then a main topic is going to be recovering from a bad or kind of poor event, jumping back on the competitive bandwagon and kind of reigniting the fire a bit, and things that demotivate us and things that remotivate us. And then finally, we'll do a little bit of a meta recap in the end, because I think some interesting developments have happened. So without further ado, let's kick it off. Vic, you were at, I forget what the tournament was called, but why don't you run me through kind of what the format was?
Yeah, so I've been doing a little bit of stuff with Team England. I've in the kind of selection process for Team England, and as part of that, we have to go to at least one team tournament with the team. Mm-hmm. So there was an 8-man team event up in northern part of the UK in Manchester, and it's my first time really doing a very large team event. We've done a small 5-man one with our Dice Down team, but this one was much bigger and it was extremely well organized. I actually went in a little bit blind into the whole process and learned a lot through the whole thing. Essentially, cool. There were 10 teams present at this event, so 80 people there, and we had to play through 5 rounds, and we ended up playing most of the other teams there with such a small kind of number of teams in attendance. Yep. So I took my Emperor's Children to that event, had 5 really good games, and I came out with a number of things which I didn't realize about team events.
What was give me 3. What was the first one that really struck you?
Yeah, well, I'm a singles player through and through. I always have been, and I just assumed that team events are so skewed that actually you can't really take anything away for singles events, but I was proved very wrong at this event. I was one of the Team England teams. There was 2 of us, and in my team, I had a number of extremely good players. I had Nas, I had Robbo, I had Josh, so all these incredible players, and they all came with great faction knowledge, and we were all working together towards one goal. So as part of that, I was able to kind of see their thought process when it came up to the pairings that they wanted to do, the way they approached games. And I actually learned so much about a number of different factions played at the highest level from the event. So even for singles players, I definitely recommend looking into team events as a way of kind of developing yourself as a player.
Yeah, and I think team events are going to be becoming more and more common in the UK scene. I know UKTC has recently brought out the Birmingham event, which is a 100-team event with 500 players, which will be the largest team event in the UK, I'd imagine, to date. And I think that's going to be a continuing trend, because I think team events are probably undeniably the most popular format, and I think probably the most popular format in Warhammer 40k, especially with the draw that they have. Not necessarily the most amount of events, but the people that go to them really have an overwhelming positive affirmation for them as well.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely saw that as well. I think the thing we don't realize is how much a team format kind of flattens out the balance of different factions. The game overall feels more balanced because you're kind of playing towards certain terrain sets and certain faction strengths and weaknesses that you can't really account for very much in singles events. Usually the terrain is completely set throughout the event and the pairings are very random. You don't know what you're going to end up playing. You can take a guess at the meta and kind of narrow it down a little bit, but there's still a big element of chance involved in it.
Yep. Yeah, you can be a bit more of a specialist on your army versus one, two, three, four, five armies, can't you? Really,
For sure.
rather than having to go, okay, I'm going to potentially face everything, and then you can play for the board as well. I know that when we played in the team event as well, I was doing the pairings, and subsequently I've been involved with New Zealand WTC team and Team Iceland as well on the online tournaments, and I've noticed that doing the pairings matrix is
Mhm.
quite difficult and requires some rehearsal as well, and obviously can have a very large impact on your overall performance. And it does require a broad understanding of how many armies play into each other. So you do sort of need that encyclopedic knowledge of, this your expected outcome is into this, for example. And yeah, that's definitely a huge part of team
Absolutely.
tournaments, isn't it? And 8 players is a lot different from 5 players, right?
Yeah, for sure. And the matrices. So that's probably my second point I want to bring up is this the matrix process and the pairings process. So the matrix is essentially a spreadsheet where you have all of your players along one axis. So you have 8 players, and you have
Hmm.
all of your opponent's players, so 8 players down the other axis. And you have to guess what your score will be roughly against whatever you play against in the opponent's team.
Mm,
It's an element of preparation involved in it. And I found it quite interesting because it's not that you have to guess exactly what score you're going to get. You don't have to guess, I'm going to win by 5 points. You
mm,
have to guess within a range of scores.
mm.
So
Yep.
the middle score was kind of a 20-point gap.
Mm,
The game is going to be within 20 points, and that's almost within a level of a draw.
mm.
And then each 20-point segment above that is a bigger and bigger win or a bigger and bigger loss. So we kind of had those 5 colors in there that we could
Mhm.
choose from.
You know what is another interesting point in this, though, is that obviously in a team dynamic, you've got a range of player skill as well, right? And a range of what I would call player personalities that, from my perspective, have actually quite a significant impact on the pairing matrix as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could all kind of collectively agree what a given outcome for an army versus an army for a singles event match should be, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
whether that be Tau versus Emperor's Children, for example, we can all kind of, 5 of us can sit together and say it should be roughly this. But when you also consider average expected performance, then tied against your player pilot versus their player pilots, I think that's a really interesting dynamic. And I think because it's an uneven player skill within your team format, fundamentally, of course, it's always uneven. That can kind of throw a whole other wrench into things as well, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what I've learned with the way that Team England does this pairing system is that they don't account for player skill.
Yeah.
They
Hmm.
assume that player skill is going to be at the maximum level. Everyone's going
Yep.
to be playing it perfectly, and then you play from there.
Yep. Which is,
Um,
I mean, it's a completely logical way to formulate it, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, because they're going to be playing at WTC against some of the best players in the world. So
Yep.
you're unlikely to hit too many very, very large mistakes that your opponents
Yep.
will make. So, yeah.
And so, did you learn much about Emperor's Children? Because obviously, we all know you've played Emperor's Children for a long time. You popularized it, and then you've had great success with it. So, game wise, were there any big takeaways, or
I
were you
think
kind of just breezing through?
my third point is going to be about the difference in mentality required for singles and team
Mm,
events. And, I played through the start of this tournament as a singles player. I was like, yeah,
mm,
I'm going to just go and do my own little thing, just win my game. But
mm,
actually, that's not the way it works in teams. In teams, you have to think about what your part is within the largest score of the team,
mm-hmm,
what you put down in your pairings matrix, and what you're actually going to achieve in the game. And
mm,
actually, getting the pairings matrix and your predicted score correct is the most important thing. And in my round 4, I was playing as a very good player, Aaron, who was playing Creations of Bile. And in my matrix, I put down that this match would be a draw, roughly a draw.
mm-hmm,
But actually, I hadn't properly read Aaron's list. I just thought it was a normal MSU Creations of Bile list.
mm.
When actually, he had 3 units of 10 possessed and a unit of 10 Terminators. And
Right.
realistically, that's too much for Emperor's Children to handle that level of pressure
Mm-hmm,
and have any kind of primary control at all. The Possessed are a great matchup into the Noise Marines. They really go through them very quickly. Even 5 Possessed will chunk their way through to Noise Marines with their Fight on Death.
mm-hmm,
So yeah, so I went into that game having to score a black score on a game which I should really be losing.
Mm.
And I learned so much about trying to just hold on to points, even if I was assuming I was going to lose the game.
And so win or lose that game?
Well, I got really lucky because I got so lucky. Like I got a few tactical decisions which gave me a good chance to come out of that game with a draw. And then I had a bit of luck on my side. He basically threw this ignore phase cap character, this demon prince, into Abaddon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a swing whether or not he actually kills Abaddon.
Of course, because you can 0-1 damage and you have a 4-up invuln anyway, right?
Exactly.
So it's tough. Yeah.
It's almost bang on average that he kills Abaddon, but he did
Yeah.
0 damage. He did 0,
Yes.
and then essentially the last bit of the game is Abaddon just sweeping the whole board.
Yeah.
So those kinds of swings can completely change things, but realistically, if we were to play the game many, many times, the score should be a slight loss to me. And I learned that you got to get that matrix right and read the list really carefully. Otherwise, you can get your team in trouble.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think there's an element that singles players can really learn from team events. And subsequently, I think there's a lot that team events can really learn from singles players.
Yeah.
Because I remember when we started playing team events, our philosophies were very different. And we lost to Team England. We lost to Team England by 1 victory point. This is when the tournament, I think, last year. And we were completely unprepared, had terrible lists, had never done a team event before, but we actually had a lot of strong mentalities that I think really helped us in that 5-man format team event. So hopefully maybe we can replicate that in, is it Birmingham nowadays? Birmingham.
Yeah, that's it.
The Super Major that I won is now being converted into a team event.
Oh, that's a shame. I want to touch on that point you just made, though, because I think that is a huge point for anyone who's primarily a team events player. Singles players have this thing, especially really good singles players, where they won't give up until the last moment. It doesn't matter if they should be losing the game. The only thing they have to work out is, how do I manage to win this, like, somehow. And sometimes I notice the teams players were like, yeah, this game, I should lose this one. And they're immediately like setting their mentality to that. It's probably a very consistent and reliable way of doing it, but it's not positive. It's not pushing beyond what is normal.
And it's difficult to play. It's difficult to maximize. It's, in all honesty, it's difficult to play well with a defeatist attitude. Like if you go into a pairing matrix with like, oh, this is a 15, this is a 5-15, right? So you're going to lose by 25 points. It's difficult to go into a game like that with the mentality that you're going to play well. Just from my perspective, going, oh, okay, I just need to keep it within 25. Like, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah,
team
absolutely.
events. But I think both of us, will be having a more exposure to team events in the future, especially next year. We will have not only a team event in Birmingham, there's another one before that as well for the UKTC, but potentially, or you're definitely going to be involved in WTC, and potentially myself at WTC as well. So it's going to be interesting to see how the single people's singles team can perform.
We'll have to see how it goes. It'll be definitely a change for us.
But speaking of singles tournaments, let's go on to Coventry, which we played like 2 weeks ago, I think.
Yes, Coventry. Oh, Coventry.
And guys, if you listen to episode 6, you know that both of Vic and I went for, I think as Vic aptly described it, the non-sensible choice in terms of the armies that we picked. Perhaps I'll just go through mine because I had a bit of a interesting road. So I made an error signing up to the tournament, and I didn't put my faction, which is something that's happened before, and I took a 10 VP penalty on my first round, so that wasn't a great start. And that's completely fair because the TOs need to have that information so they can do the list checking and stuff like that. So, classic error and a complete stupid fault on my behalf. But having said that, I don't like to set my faction early. I like to do it the last second so that people don't know maybe what I'm playing. But that's a whole nother discussion. So I went and playing demons. My list in hindsight was not good. I thought it was good, but I didn't realize that the Bloodthirster actually is not a good unit. It's just quite all round bad, and I'll get to that in a second. So round 1, I actually played quite a good player, Marcus Hinson, on House Raven Knights with 2 big knights. And I thought, Knights pretty straightforward, but actually This list was actually very good against my demons. Basically because he could do the auto 6 to wound calculated targeting that converts the big gun straight into mortal wounds.
Mhm.
And actually, against things like bloodletters, that's really good because you can just deal 8 mortal wounds to bloodletters, which is, effective 100 points. And, bloodletter's primary defense against ranged attacks are obviously that they're one wound, 10-man squad, but they have a 4-up invulnerable as well. So that basically gets all around that. Needless to say, I win the game by 8 points and then actually take a 10 VP loss, which means I lose the game by 2 points. So that's not a great start to the tournament. It's actually the very first tournament I've ever not gone 3-0 day one. So apart from a team tournament. And it's the first tournament I've ever been to where I've lost round one as well. So, disappointing start. And then I get paired into an orc player who is someone who's been on our team for a while. I apologize because I forget your name. But he plays Goff's Orcs, and he plays it really well. And I was like, you know what? Okay, I've got a lot of flamers. This will be a decent matchup. But Orcs is a very bad matchup for demons, primarily because they just have so much reasonable toughness and multi-wound models that actually demons really struggle into that because actually demons are terrible at trading up. Flamers are about the only thing that trade up in demons, and orcs are so fast they can tag flamers. You can teleport one out, sure, but the rest of your army doesn't trade up in the slightest. So, needless to say, I actually ended up losing the game. I think I lost that game by about 20 points, and then I made the decision to drop. Because in my head, you know what? I'd rather go and play the 2-day event that was happening. So this is on the Friday, on the 3-day event. I said, you know what, David? I'm just gonna take the next game off, drop, and then go into the two-day tournament. And that way I can spend, the Friday evening just watching games, hanging out with people, and then I can feel refreshed for the next day, and I can just go in and take it seriously on the 2-day event. And my mentality going into the day 3 event was pretty poor. I think from a competitive standpoint, I was taking things pretty loose. I was playing pretty loose. Like I wasn't playing well. And I think people who have perhaps played me in real life in a tournament know that when I'm playing serious, I'm playing, very serious. And, I'm not chitty-chatting. I'm concentrating and making sure that I'm trying to play very methodical and planned. And so I thought, I remember sending you the text, Vic, on the Friday night, and I said, look, you know what? No more foolishness. I'm not going to be messing around. I'm going to go and crush the day 2, the 2-day event, and that's how I'll do. So before that happened, the 3-day event, there were a ton of great games. There were a ton of great games all weekend on that tournament, but the Friday night had like some excellent games between yourself, and then Mike Porter was playing a great game. Anthony Vanella was playing a great game. Nassim was playing a great game. There were so many excellent games. So it was really nice just to go, I'm going to relax, look at some great games, hang out with everyone, and then just refocus for the 2-day event.
Yeah, it was an awesome event, actually. The kind of people who were attending were like the kind of best of the world scene, not just the UK scene. We were really lucky to have Anthony Vanella join us for this one.
Definitely, yeah.
And he put up an incredible showing through this event, and I think he left with such a positive experience of the way the UK tournament scene works.
Yeah.
I think we're hitting a point now in the UK tournament scene where we're the premium kind of events in the world. It's being done so well by Zach and the team at the UKTC. And the thing is, they're still taking on feedback. And some of the maps have some deficiencies in them in terms of having a bit too much shooting fire lines. But Zach asks for feedback every single event, and you can kind of feel confident that something will be done to improve things.
Definitely, yeah. Zach is the type of person where if you say, "Hey, can we talk about this?" He'll give you the fair shot. He'll come down and listen to you. So if you actually feel like that's a great point you raised right there, is if you feel something is imbalanced in the UKTC map, send an email to Zach. Personally, I think that actually, here's a hot take: the middle L medium ruins actually blocking the line of sight or removing the outer lip on those. I think that would be a great change. That's just me. I think they're too easy to shoot into with some armies. That's particularly looking at Tau. perhaps. So that'd be an interesting change. And we haven't had a map change for quite a while, I think, and the meta has gotten more shooty, so that's something interesting to consider.
So I'd have two hot takes on the UKTC
Okay.
tournament terrain. I actually wouldn't do the one you suggested. I really
Mm-hmm.
like that those ones have windows and they open up that play for aggressive shooting armies to come that far forward.
Yep.
Because they have to trade with that particular thing, and shooting tends to be more inefficient in terms
Mm-hmm.
of trading. What I would love to see is the little side ruins, the tiny ones that are not obscuring, even not being 5 inches tall. I would love if they gain the obscuring keyword, so you have a little bit of space just to tuck in behind them.
Mm-hmm.
The next one is on any of the long ways maps, so the hammer and anvil missions. At the moment, functionally, against any army that can move more than 12 inches, there is nowhere to hide in your deployment zone except the very back corner, which creates some games which are completely one-sided depending on who goes first or second. Coventry has that particularly because it's an 8-round event, so everyone plays through to round 6, which is a hammer and anvil, and round 8, which is a hammer and anvil. So yeah, the UKTC terrain is designed very nicely for diagonal and corner missions, and designed somewhat poorly for the Dawn of War missions, and designed very poorly for the hammer and anvil missions.
Yeah, I would say that the Dawn of War missions are designed well. I would like to see, if we didn't adopt the change I just said, moving the medium L closer to your own deployment zone, so it's just a little bit harder to go in and touch and see into. That'd be fine, easy to stage into. And then I would agree that the hammer and anvil missions are designed somewhat poorly, and I think that's just a reflection of the fact that we don't play those as much.
Correct.
So perhaps moving they don't do that for tournament organizing reasons, because playing long ways on side by side tables is difficult. But so back to Coventry. I went in the 2-day event, and went 5-0.
Nice.
So I won the Demons Mirror twice. Had a great game against Byron Saidu, who is a really lovely guy. He's been playing Demons for a while, and I'd never played the Demon Mirror before. Well, actually, I played it the round before playing him, and I won that one, I think, like 96-45, and then I played Byron and won that one, I think, again, like 90-50 or something like that. But we had two fantastic games, and then finally I bet Byron's father, Sid, in the final round, playing 13 and 14 armigers or something like that, which was another. I think I won that one like 96-50 or something like that. Nice. But you know what I would say is that despite not doing as well as I had hoped, of course, I had a lot of fun playing the games. I had a lot of fun playing Demons. They were just, it was nice playing something different. It was nice playing something, that had maybe a bit more dynamism perhaps to it. Technically a little bit more nuanced, perhaps you could argue. And just a different flavor overall. And it was a nice break from having the expectation to win everything. For me personally, I think I was going into it pretty, this is a fun tournament. I'm going to play. I'm just going to have fun. Going to make sure, I'm going to try and play well, but I'm not expecting to do overly well. It was a nice break.
Yep. Well, I guess it's my turn, right?
Yeah. So how was your day one?
So actually, you know what? Honestly, I did have a good event. I've come out of it feeling a little bit frustrated, and I took a list. So I took my Eldar Swift Strikes list that requires a huge amount of both player skill and like physical energy to actually play the army and move everything backwards, forwards, plan out the loads of options that you have.
And there's a lot of admin, right? Playing the army.
There's a lot of admin. So I went into the tournament knowing there are some bad matchups here. A lot of 2+ armor saves are going to be tough. Flyers are going to be tough as well. And I made some list decisions to try and help counter those things. What I didn't account for was my own fatigue. And I went into the first round and I hit Custodes with all 2-up armor saves. So it was all vehicle Custodes. So that was an unbelievable grind. And I won that game by 2 points.
Yeah.
And I was playing right down to the last minute. The round afterwards, I ended up going into 9 Paragon War suits, which also have 2+ armor saves across everything, and played to the last minute, and I was absolutely exhausted by this point.
Yeah, that's 6 hours of full Warhammer.
Yep. So I
Yeah.
won that game, and then after that, I get the joy of having to play. Well, a joy, like a genuine joy, but also I'm like, please give me an easy game now, of playing Innis.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sure everyone's heard about Innis. Innis is like a world-class
And
player.
I was watching this game right next to you, of course, because I was off on round 3.
Yeah, and this is a tough one because Innis is playing his GSC list. He's got a good number of reps into it. And it's very hard to understand exactly what GSC do. You're kind of at
Mm.
their mercy,
Hmm.
because you kind of half understand what the threat ranges are, but you don't really know it until it's like actually like done to you.
Yeah.
I was playing against Innis, and I have a good list for this matchup. Like the output of the Swift Strike the Eldar list is very high into
It's
an
huge.
army like Innis's.
And what I would say before you go on, I would preface
Mm,
this because this event was really good. There were so many chill people there, and everyone genuinely knew each other. So
mm,
we were chatting. I was at the table chatting like, "Oh, Ernest, do you think this is a good matchup and what like that?" And Camp Gene Stealer Cult were saying this is an auto win matchup for
yeah,
them, right?
in
And I,
WTC.
in WTC, right? Yeah. And then I was looking at you, and we were both thinking, I'm pretty sure 30 Swooping Hawks or 26 with AP0 shots has got to be good against this one, surely, right? So that was kind of the context going into it all, right? We were sort of a little bit we were sitting on two different sides of the fence, that's for
Yeah,
sure.
we were a little bit confused, and
Hmm.
I think like we played the game out, and the Swooping Hawks did prevail in that game,
Hmm.
and I think the kind of Polish WTC guys were there, and they were still saying that oh, this is a guaranteed win for GSC. So
Hmm.
there's a level of understanding about that particular matchup that's definitely gone over our heads.
Hmm.
But even Innes was saying there's definitely a path to victory there. I think it did give me an advantage that I went second in this game. So, but I
Hmm. Really?
also I did, yeah, I went second, and I kind of in my head thought, okay,
Hmm.
that immediately means he's in my face with everything. Is that not what the list is aiming for? I'm not entirely
I would
sure.
disagree. I would say going first is very good for you, personally, but
Yeah, I would have thought if I went first, I get a whole extra turn of shooting or something like that.
exactly, yeah.
I'm not entirely sure.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I guess because he's in blips, I won't exactly know where he's going to deploy, and he can make it very
Hmm.
awkward for me. So maybe I waste an entire turn if I go
No,
first,
because very big footprint on the army, huge,
right?
covers up the whole deployment zone.
So there's definitely a level of understanding about that matchup
Hmm.
that we are yet to gain. But yeah, I had a great game against Innes, and he's so nice. He's really really
Hmm.
nice to play against, and he plays very very fast. So
Yep.
he definitely was keeping me under pressure with the clock.
That's definitely something I think we could both learn from Ennis and the way he practices as well. I know they practice on clocks
Very
very often, where
aggressively.
we do not. We probably take the almost exact opposite approach to that. You and I, when we play, right, we play very loose, taking a lot of time. Even between our turns, we're talking out everything and theorizing and what like that. And that's just what works well for us, right? But I think Ennis definitely has that advantage of playing fast as well, especially. And he's got an army which has a lot of administration, a
Mhm.
lot of rolling, a lot of movement as well, right? So good on him for playing an army like that. It can't be easy, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I'm on 3-0 at the end of day one, and I'm thinking,
Hmm.
I've managed to somehow scrape this through. I'm not sure how, but I have. And I'm paired up the next day against Mike Porter, so I've got
Mm,
another world class player. So it's
yep.
I was kind of excited about this. What I hadn't taken into account is done any prep to realize that we were playing on Tide of Conviction.
Mm,
And Tide of Conviction has notoriously been a problem for me.
yeah.
Always been a problem
Yeah,
for me.
this is where you and I played at Birmingham actually on Title Conviction.
Because there's something about Tide of Conviction playing on a Dawn of War mission, so long table edges, like close to each other, and having a whole two with 6 objectives on this particular kind of layout.
Mm.
For
I
some,
love this map, by the way. I think it's just so interesting and dynamic, and yeah,
yeah,
I'm glad it's in the map pool.
and like this mission is bad straight away. It's bad for me. Like doing a whole two
Hmm.
against Harlequins, I'm going to really struggle with that. And when we deployed, and Mike deployed his army, he had stacked one corner, the Big L, and he'd
Mm.
put like 3 boats, which were just hanging out loose across the other side of his deployment.
Hmm.
And he didn't have enough command points to Phantasm, so he can't redeploy anything.
Yep. That's a key part about Mike's list, is that he chose not to go for the redeploy.
And
Well.
I've got 26 Swooping Hawk, my whole army directly opposite these 3 Star Weavers that is 75% of his deployment zone. And I'm just there like, if I go first here, I just remove those 3 Star Weavers, get behind, kill everything inside the boats, and it'll take Mike the entire game to dig me out of that flank. And he'll never catch up on primary. His entire game plan will fall apart from that.
Yep.
And I was just, like, in my head, I knew I'm never going to do this. This is not going to work out. And Mike rolled Mike rolled a 2, and I was like, oh, perfect.
Wow.
I've got this. And obviously, I rolled the 1, and he goes first.
Yeah.
Even at this point, I've still got that little bit of hope. I like Phantasm everything out and just dump everything into one corner. And I'm like, okay, if I have enough output, I can grind this out. And then Mike just like I need a bit to go my way, and things just didn't go my way. The damage output just fell like so far short of what it needed, and I was just getting ground out of this game. And I felt the frustration there, because I was like, how big like that first turn swing is. I remember that used to be such a big thing, but why is it here again? Is it in fairness, I have to take some responsibilities. The nature of my list does have a first turn swing in it. And I felt that again in game 6, where I played the mirror against Colin. And Colin
lost to Mike Porter.
Yes.
So you're 3-1, and then you win your next game, right? Against...
I won that 5th game into Yanari.
Okay. That wasn't Ben Jones, was it?
That was Richard Sims.
Okay, Richard. Oh, that's right. Yeah, Richard Sims. And then you're playing the mirror match on Hammer and Anvil, so far away as possible from each other. And this is where I think a lot of your critique for the Hammer and Anvil deployment comes in, right? So run us through. You're playing the mirror matchup, which,
So some background on this. I've played this particular mission. So this is the 6th mission in UKTC. I played it 3 times as an Eldar mirror match against Colin. Before that, I played against Manny in a mirror match, and before that, I played against Conrad in the mirror match. And every single time, it's been the player who's gone first that has got a big win off of this, because the opposing player can move beyond 12 inches, which means you can see entirely into the entirety of the opponent's deployment zone. So that means Colin got first turn here, and the amount of pressure was absolutely huge. I have to give credit to Colin. Like, I feel like I outplayed him at the start of the game, but he outplayed me in the middle of the game. So player skill wise, he matched me blow for blow.
Nice.
With the advantage.
Well, respect to Colin.
Yeah, Colin, he smashed it. Played really, really precisely and meticulously. At the start, things didn't quite go how he had kind of planned it, I think, but he managed to keep up the pressure through the mid game and didn't give me a chance to kind of dig myself out. And with the massive advantage he gets from going first, you just get so much pressure and killing potential going first in that map. I had zero way. I think that was a huge loss. That was a 89-38 for me loss. So zero digging myself out of that one. I think I was pretty much tabled by the end of it as well.
Yeah. So after that, so it's end of day 2. What's your headspace like at the end of day 2?
I'm there. I'm exhausted, and just thinking, do I really want to put myself through one more day of this? At this point, I mean, in a way, I kind of regret dropping at this point. So I dropped on day 3. So I just played the 6 rounds rather than the 8. In a way, I regret, because actually the field was so strong. I probably would have got 2 really interesting games out of those last 2, even having lost two games. But ultimately, I had a really lovely Sunday, just chilling out and decompressing and kind of just gathering myself, forgetting about 40k for a second, in a way. So,
and it can be really important, I think, to understand when it's time to prioritize things like that, right? Like, there's going to be a lot of time to play 40k. There's always going to be events, someone like that, but there's not always going to be time where you can, just fully relax from a tough event, and decompress, where you're not going straight back into work. You're not going to deal with stuff, on the Monday, for example. You can just hang out with your better half and take it easy, right?
That's it, man. Yeah, so I had a really chilled Sunday after that. I was just keeping an eye on seeing how kind of everyone was getting on at the
Mm,
end, and it looked like there was some really interesting games. Mike versus Anthony
yep.
Vanilla, and
Yeah.
then Nas versus Mike.
Yeah. So here's what I would say, because I got to watch a lot of those games,
Mhm.
and the end of them, and the Anthony Vanilla versus Mike Porter game. Anthony and Vanilla could have, it was a very close game, and
Mhm.
Anthony could have won actually. So I think that kind of to me speaks about the state of the game that it's in right now.
Mhm.
I've been playing a lot of chess recently, and something I noticed about chess is that you're not, well, at the levels that I play it at, which is not particularly high, but is that you can always there's always things that you can do well at the later part of the game that can actually win you the game, and I think that's a big part of the game state right now. There's still room to make error right at the end of the game, and there's always ways to play very well and make a huge difference even on turn 4 and 5.
For sure.
And a lot of those games are reminiscent of that. Apart from the Tau Flyer games where you kind of just get blown off the board, which is not great. That's good. So we're going to jump now into part 2, and we'll catch you just after the great jazz music here in a second. See you guys then.
All right, welcome back, guys. So we're going to be discussing now about how to keep yourself motivated when you're a little bit demotivated. So Dave, just wanted to ask you kind of, is there one thing that really stands out to you, a way to kind of get over being demotivated, or a thing that makes you demotivated?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's been very um, poignant recently is that I kind of feel like I've lost my identity as a 40k player in terms of my direction recently, and that's a combination of my competitiveness versus my changing relationship with 40k and my initial goals and changing relationship with 40k. I think I'm taking things a little bit less seriously, which has been very good for me. And then also, I've kind of lost my army identity, right?
Mhm.
I played Leviathan Lids and I played Crusher before that, and that's just what I played, right? I just destroyed everyone with Tyranids. And since the nerf, there was actually a very available army to play, Kraken, which I still think is probably you could argue is a top 3 army in the game
Mhm.
right now. But I just thought, look, David, maybe this is going to be an opportunity to explore different armies, and I just didn't have that motivation to pick up Kraken because it was going to be the same. Like, I'm sure I could pick it up and play it at Coventry and do very well. Because this is very strong. It would have been very good into the field as well.
Mhm.
And I had great lists from people that were practicing with it and people that I talk with regularly and regularly still. But for me, it was kind of like I didn't really want to play it, and then I was kind of demotivated because I didn't have an army where I was extremely well practiced, an army that knew I would do very well with, and something that I was really glued with me, right? So that for me already set the expectations of the tournament, not going in to win it, which is rare, I know, for both of us. And it also felt like I didn't have the pressure on me to never lose, if you know what I mean, like people are like, oh, XYZ lost, and it's great to be in the position of a player of when people are surprised that you lose, but at the same time, it's always like, man, I lost. Like people are going to say, oh, David lost, all that stuff, right? Or Vic lost,
Yeah,
which isn't.
it's interesting. I would say a big positive of this, say the Tyranid nerf, and
Mm-hmm,
you potentially losing the identity of your army that you were so experienced with, is
mm-hmm,
that over these like last 2 months or so, I've seen you become much more of a well-rounded competitive player,
mm-hmm,
exploring and understanding multiple different armies and their rules, building lists for them. And I think in the long run, having moments like this where things don't necessarily go your way, those are the moments when you actually kind of develop the most. And that's like, I've had multiple moments where I've lost my army identity and I've been a bit demotivated, and
mm-hmm,
maybe I'm like losing a lot more games than normal.
mm-hmm.
And you always do come out the other side kind of a little bit excited when something clicks. When an
Yeah.
army
Yeah.
clicks, when you finally like sat down and pondered enough and been like,
Yeah.
there you go, that's the idea, that's the one that works. And it
Mm.
happened to me with the Emperor's Children. It just clicked.
Hmm.
All of a sudden, I had zero idea what I was doing before the Emperor's Children idea clicked in.
Yep.
And then how exciting was that? I managed to take that to like 4 or 5 tournaments now, and
Yeah, and crushed it.
yeah,
Obviously,
and it's
LGT destroying it as well, right?
yeah, and it's been
Yeah.
really enjoyable and really fun. So
So I think that's the kind of two sides of the same coin, right? It's demotivating when you lose your army identity, and it's very motivating when you have a strong army identity run, something that you like is performing well, and you sort of are attached to that, and you're still enjoying it.
for sure, man.
So
Yeah.
I think obviously if you're struggling in that same problem, I think that's a great way is trying to maybe explore other armies, think about different ways of doing things, and just having fun in different ways of the game. And I had a lot of fun painting actually, painting and hobbying, which is like if you told me that 6 months ago, or if someone told you that about me 6 months ago, you probably would have laughed because that's definitely not what I'm well known for. So yeah, I mean that just goes to show how much of a mindset change I had, and I think doing the podcast has been something that's had a big influence on that for me as well. But yeah, what about you? Demotivating? What's where the
So
frustrations come from?
I think some of the worst periods of competitive 40k I've had is when I have chased the meta bandwagon too hard.
Mm.
And this is quite an interesting one because what happens is sometimes is I see a list, right? And perhaps this list has 9 Eldar flyers in it. And then I think that, oh, you know what? That's really strong. Conceptually, that's going to do really well. Let's get that and play it. And I absolutely hate it. It's got nothing to do with the way that I play and enjoy 40k.
Mm.
And it's moments like that where I give up on my identity and I just try and just like play the most powerful thing,
Mhm.
where I end up kind of losing my motivation and just not enjoying every game I play of 40k. And
Yep.
then I come back and I play an army like Hail of Doom, which is both strong and also the way I like to play 40k,
Mhm.
or Emperor's Children, which is again both of those things. And
I've got a question actually.
yeah.
Did when you came back? So guys that don't know, Vic took a break from 40k when I was probably doing when I was coming up.
Mm-hmm.
You were playing Age of Sigmar. Did you come back to 40k when Eldar came back into the picture, or was it Tau? I forget.
It was before Eldar,
All right.
so it
So
it was
I think
Admech,
Tau was wrong. Was it? You played at
yeah,
Bournemouth.
Admech, Orcs, and then Custodes and Tau came out as
Yeah.
Orcs and Admech got nerfed.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, I came slowly back into it with Tau.
Yeah, and that's because that was an army that you identified with. You enjoyed the aesthetic of the playstyle of it.
Yeah, Tau is super cool to me. I've always found them really,
Yeah.
really cool.
Hmm.
How they kind of look. So yeah, it was kind of I'd done a little bit of Age of Sigmar, played a few events and things, and I thought let's find a moment. The second the indirect fire started dropping off on armies that I don't like, I came into an army that I do like that had indirect fire, but I didn't
Yeah.
run any indirect fire.
Ah, right.
Point.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think what would be my mind state at the moment going into Leicester coming up? I have I think so. I think this is true for both of us, right? We've been looking at other armies. We've been trying to reassess the meta, what we think is strong, with the intentions of swapping armies potentially. And that's been a really cool experience. I've been on kind of one army that I've been playing a reasonable amount that I really enjoyed the look of to begin with, because I kind of enjoy, with my background in Magic the Gathering, I really enjoy kind of puzzle box armies like that. A little bit of a hint there. So that's been a really rewarding experience for me, learning another army, because I have a limited knowledge when it comes to understanding of other armies, and that's something I've been trying to work on. But that's been something that's been positive for me in Warhammer. I do like the process of playing many games and refining and continuously improving the very last little fine points of a list. I'm a player that likes to play a lot of games, talk to a lot of people, get different opinions and weigh things up, and then ultimately come to my kind of version on things. And so I've been really enjoying that process of taking something that perhaps has previously done well, and then seeing how I can improve it and do better with it. And so that's been a motivator for me. It's been nice to go through that process again, because Tyranids, I was just I knew it through and through. It was like going to work, playing a tournament. So yes, that's been a big, exciting part of playing Warhammer again for me.
For sure. No, that's really good, man. I'm glad you're enjoying it. And, I think an exciting thing is when you've got your army that you've kind of painted up and you're
Hmm.
proud of it and everything, and then you actually take it to that first event once
Yeah.
you've kind of practiced it and understood, because you spend so much time thinking, right? Thinking
Hmm.
about how this interaction works, what the average output of this particular interaction is,
Mm.
and you try and piece that together, and to actually put it on the table in a tournament is the most exciting thing.
Yeah,
um
rolling those dice.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What about yourself? What state are you in at the moment?
So my problem is I've got too many options here. um
Must be tough. Must be
I
hard.
have too many options, and I don't know which one to go for. Also, there's a little bit of element of I've moved house, and most of my
Hmm.
Warhammer stuff is with my parents, and it's a bit awkward to try and like go back, grab a few bits and pieces, and then suddenly the next day change the idea of what army I'm actually planning on running. So at the moment, I'm a little bit in limbo. I've
Hmm.
always got the backup option of just running the Emperor's Children, which requires zero hobby, and I have everything
Hmm.
with me.
Yeah.
And I really actually enjoyed using the Emperor's Children again at the team tournament.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because I know I just did me playing Tyranids was a bit like just kind of going to work.
Yeah,
I was like, okay, I got a job to do, clinically playing. But you're still having a good time playing older EC? Are you still having fun, learning?
yeah. I'm still finding that quite a lot of the games I'm kind of still doing something different. It's like
Mm. Yep.
there's a different game plan here that works best
Hmm.
for this game, and it's quite interesting. It's not just the same thing over and over again.
Which
Uh,
just goes to show you how deep of a game Warhammer is, right?
mhm,
Like, I must have played easily 150 games
mhm,
of Tyranids, and
mhm.
I was still finding little things here and there and be like, oh, okay, do this one. Position, deployment and positioning is something that I don't ever think you can 100% get right as well,
Yeah,
which
for
is why
sure,
the game's so great, right?
for sure. So yeah, I'm
So,
just trying to work it out. I think it's unlikely I'll do the Eldar again at the moment.
but we talked previously about, okay, I think in the last episode we said there's a sensible option,
Mhm.
and then there's the hard option. I went full tango and played demons,
Yep.
and, and I think this time for me I'm going to make the sensible choice. What do you leaning more sensible, or are you leaning more experimental?
I think it still needs both. It needs sensible and hard.
Hmm.
So I'm going to give an example here. Right. This is a dark, dangerous example that I'm going to give, which ties in with my thing about stuff that demotivates me.
Hmm.
And against my own advice, on the weekend after the team event, I was there, and it's the team event is in Element Games. Element Games is a massive shop, and I
Hmm.
wandered around the store and I was looking at all the stuff that was there. There was so much Leagues of Votan stuff there. And in teams, Leagues of Votan are absolutely incredible. They're just
Really
insanely good in teams, because
nice.
the way it works is that often the first army you put forward can pick a map, and Leagues of Votan on a very open board are devastating.
Mm. Yeah.
So the Leagues of Votan players were absolutely killing it through this weekend, and that was kind of
Mm.
siphoning through to me.
Mm.
And I saw it there, and I was just like, there's a few boxes here. Like maybe if I like hold them in my hand, how many can I carry at one time? And Leagues of Votan doesn't need many boxes to actually make
Yeah.
an army. So
Yep.
yeah, so I bought some Leagues of Votan stuff, and actually I haven't. I built one Hecaton land fortress, right? And I have kept everything else in its box.
Yep.
And then like we did a couple of test games and things, and
Yeah.
it's just not me really.
It's not. I'm really surprised you even bought it, to be honest, because that army's not even me. And I played Admech for like 200 games, and that army is so boring. Even Votan is so boring to me. So I was so surprised you got.
God, I hate when I
Yeah.
do stuff like that. It's awful. But all
But
Warhammer players know about this. This
But
happens.
having said that, this ties in so well to what you said in the beginning,
Uh,
which is on the meta bandwagon, right? And you
mhm.
sort of saw the performance; it was right there. The the performance evaluation metrics were in black and white right in front of your face, right? And you saw that perhaps a little golden ticket, a little nugget. You were like, how can I? These players are pretty good, but if I really put time and effort into it, I bet I could improve their list. So I'm going to buy the Votan and see what's going on. But we had 2 games today, and the games where perhaps you thought you were going to win as well. It was the second game. I still managed to win this.
Yeah, and it just felt so like it's one of those armies where everything just kind of just happens.
Yeah.
You don't really have too much control. Your stuff only moves so far, and
you have very little player agency in that army.
You're here and you're planning one turn ahead, and you're moving to that spot you planned. If you get move blocked or if you get tagged, you just stand there and shoot. It's like you have no control over everything. You're just kind of letting your opponent try and work out a way of dealing with you. A true stat check, a true kind of shooting gunline army, and that is utterly boring.
It is utterly boring. I'm not convinced that Votan are exceptionally good on UKTC as well. That's just my personal opinion. We'll have to wait and see how it goes. I think they've got some strong points to them, but ultimately I think that lack of agency or dynamism is a fundamental weakness. And I noticed that in many games, the Hecaton Land Fortress is very easy to block line of sight from. Like in the games that we play, I said, well, okay, I'm not going to let you activate all 3 of your land fortresses. I might let you activate 1. But I can shoot other parts of your army and then have 1 fortress shoot me, and that's absolutely fine. And then I can come back around and then deal with the other 2 later on, right? So
yep, absolutely.
It's difficult.
Yep. And the Berserks moving, the Berserks are incredible. They're a great unit.
Yeah.
But how easy is it to map out their threat range?
Just 8 from the land fortress and then
8
charge.
from the land fortress and then see what they can do from there.
Having said that, guys, Vic still managed to get into 2 of my characters.
Not when your opponent helps you like that, it's fine.
That was the game I came back and won, actually, funnily enough. But it doesn't feel like that army has a lot on the board, especially if you play 3 land fortress. But so it's tough. So maybe we're thinking back to the tried and true. Sounds like you enjoyed Emperor's Children. Sounds like you had a good time with it. So
there's a good chance for sure. I mean, I've got a little bit more time. I'll just think across this week. See where I am with everything.
Yeah, nice. And let us know what you're thinking about playing for coming up, Lester. And if you've had kind of experiences with bad tournament demotivation, or perhaps what demotivates you, chances are it probably happens to us as well. So maybe if you've got any tips and tricks, just let us know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed the Fireside episode, we thank you for listening. Sorry it's been a couple of weeks since our last episode, but I hope you've had a great time here, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Take care, guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the 40k Fireside podcast. Vic and I hope you've enjoyed listening, and we greatly appreciate any feedback that you can provide after the show.